Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Helen Amery is with me today. We are talking about transformation at a very personal level. And I think that word transformation has been overdone. So let me scroll back a bit and just say, look, if you want to bring your best self to work, you got to go beneath the surface. You've got to get underneath the superficial, moving the furniture around and go deeper. But it doesn't involve self-analysis. And so what Helen has done and I'm just going to pull this out because I just think it's rather brilliant, is that it's rapid transformation without endless self-analysis. The assumption is that if I want to adapt myself to meet today's world, then I'm going to have to analyze myself to death, go back into my childhood and da. No, not the case. And we're going to be talking about why that's so. We're also going to be talking about some of the patterns and signals that tell us how people are responding emotionally and psychologically, so that you can be aware of what those reactions and coping strategies are and choose something different. So Helen describes her work as being for high achievers who are done with being triggered and are ready for a lasting transformation. And I want to open our conversation, Helen, with the idea that you and I talked about earlier, which is, that a lot of people are finding that that they're not where they are right now is not the dream they were working for. They thought they were working for. Can you tell us something about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's a theme that's shown up again and again and again over the last 7-8 years of my work. And although my work has changed, the same problem has kept being the thing that drives people into that change, into that exploration. Like you've just said, that thing that leads us to go beneath the surface, to go, well, I've moved the pieces around on the surface. I have done the progression through the career, or I've grown multiple businesses and sold them, and I've got all this money in the bank now, and I've done the investment thing, and I've got the family in the car, and the So why does it not feel better? That's the dream we were all sold. That's the dream that we were told. If you do your schoolwork, you get your good qualifications, and you get the good job, you get all the money, then you'll be happy, and then you can retire happy. It's like we've delayed our happiness, we've delayed our fulfillment, our true satisfaction, thinking at some point in the future, then I'll get there. And the consistent experience, especially for people at higher levels, because the contrast becomes so great. Consistent experiences, well, it's not having more money, because it's the dissonance of, well, I got here, so where's the prize? Where's the reward? And that's exactly like you said, that's what sends us back into that inner work, to go, okay, there's something else going on. Let me deal with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Now, who steps up? Because, people can sometimes fear that, oh my gosh, you're going to expose a part of me I don't like or don't want to know about. Or, there's that whole vulnerability dimension, which has been, for some strange reason has been turned into a weakness when it's a leadership strength, but for some reason is perceived as being a weakness. It's, so can you dig into that a bit for us, please?
Yeah, well, actually, just on that vulnerability piece first, to me, it's used in two ways. It's either seen as a weakness, or people are performing vulnerability, trying to be vulnerable to try and be a good leader. And neither of those are true vulnerability. So, and I get it, that thing about, will I have to expose stuff about me, about my life, about my experience? Totally understandable that people feel like that. So I guess the thing that does bring people to my work is that they are courageous, but not because they're going to have to tell me that stuff. Because, as you said before, my work doesn't involve any self-analysis. It doesn't involve any self-storytelling. So I have no idea. When I'm working with a client, I have no idea their background. I have no idea what kind of childhood they had. I get no idea of what sort of experiences they went through. They get to keep all that private to themselves, because the process does not require me to know any of that stuff. And in fact, a client recently, he said to me, he's like, and he's a coach, he's an MD of a coaching business now, and he knows the industry, he knows all the kind of things that you're supposed to tell your coach or your therapist. And he came to the end of the session, he's like, I would never, those things that this process had me become aware of, I would never have told somebody those things. I would never have opened up to a coach or therapist about those things. But because of the nature of the process, I was able to actually deal with them, because I was able to keep that private and do the work that was required to get them out of my system, out of my world. So that's one of the big appeals of this work, because yes, it takes courage, and you've got to want to change your life. And sometimes that takes some courage to go, okay, I might have all these bells and whistles, but I want to take this step and actually make it feel like bells and whistles. But ultimately, it doesn't need the level of courage and vulnerability, not the work I do, doesn't need that level of courage and vulnerability that often many talk therapies require, or coaching even requires. You get to keep it all to yourself. And if ever you do want to talk to somebody about it, there are loads of great people you can talk to, but you don't need it for this. You don't need it to get free from your emotional reactions.
So I love that. I'm intrigued by the process because I'm a process nerd anyhow. So that's an automatic thing for me. We're going to get to that in a moment. But what I'd like to do is go back, roll back, and just explore what are the consequences of not taking the deep dive. I mean, I look at the mental health statistics worldwide, and I know that from a biological point of view, depression is sourced in repression of expression. I mean,
Nice.
I could see that in the work I was doing, and you kind of, whoa, this is interesting. And then I had that confirmed biologically. So, if you're in an environment where you're constantly put down and not able to express your core talent, your creative talent, it's gonna have a price. But at the higher level, in theory, that shouldn't be an issue. What's really the consequence of not, taking the step and caring for yourself, having compassion for yourself?
Yeah, in many ways, there's still an absence of expression. So even at those higher levels, people are still holding back in some way. They're still potentially playing a political game over what they actually truly believe. They're holding back what they really want to say to their team members for fear of what will they think, how will they react, is this going to lead to some kind of being in trouble? So there is still a repression of expression. I love that as the source of depression. There is still that at that level. It's just the characters are different, the circumstances are different, but the pattern still plays out. Or equally, it plays out with partners, wives, husbands, where there's a feeling like you can't say or be all of who you actually want to be and who you feel yourself to be with your other half. So that I still see as a theme. I see themes of lack and scarcity. So this feeling of whatever money I have, it's not enough. However many businesses I have, it's not enough. However much I've grown, it's not enough. And ambition is a great thing, but it doesn't need to come with that feeling of lack and scarcity. It doesn't need to have that urgent drive behind it. It can be a fun drive. It can be an enlivening drive. And so this lack and scarcity can also be a thing that shows up, which also therefore comes with a lack of joy. There's a lot of men who come and they're like, oh, this weight of responsibility and all these people, whether they're in the family or whether they're in the workplace, whether they're investors, whoever it is this responsibility. And I've got to carry all this and I've got to do it all right. And I've got to keep everything going. And not surprising, therefore, that joy is quite absent because there's a lot that is unnecessarily being carried. And
yeah,
that.
I totally get that. The whole, because there, I mean, in some instances, the question is, what does joy feel like? I mean, I don't even know, when you work hard and you do all those, you tick all those boxes that they tell you you're supposed to do, and then you realize, it's joyless. And so, but without having a real grip on or memory of that sensation. So, it is that sparkle. I mean, Dan Zook on another conversation, we talk about the Sparkle Studio he runs, and it's very much around bringing out your sparkle and making it's a feeling alive. Actually, it's feeling full vitality and alive.
Yeah. So that old quote about enjoy the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's literally impossible to enjoy the journey if you're running in that not enough time, not enough money. I'm not good enough, chasing, because every time from that energy, every time you achieve the goal, you can't enjoy even the goal. It's like a brief moment, and I know this because I've done this, so I know the feeling of it. It's a brief moment of I did it, oh, now on to the next thing. And you haven't enjoyed the journey to it, you can't fully enjoy the goal itself, and then you're quickly onto the next thing because it's well, that wasn't enough, so more. It is never enough. Never enough.
Yeah. And I think that running parallel to that observation is just the feeling that I'm not enough is it, I mean, I've experienced exactly what you've described. You write a book and you think, okay, that's good. Tick. And then you go to it's fascinating
Yeah.
how it operates inside like an autopilot plan that you didn't sign on for,
Yes,
or at least you don't
absolutely.
remember signing on for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Exactly
Yeah.
that.
We've also in our casual conversation talked about eggshell behavior, which
Mm.
I think is a byproduct of not going deep. It's a byproduct of finding yourself on the spectrum of victim to, and I'm going to use co-creator. I know it's overused, but it's that idea that you're flowing with your space, with the environment you're in, versus fighting with it and feeling oppressed by it. Eggshell behavior. What's that?
Mm. Yes, you know that feeling when you're working with somebody or even living with somebody where you feel you've got to tiptoe, like you've got to tread really carefully. So we I don't know if it's a British phrase, but like you're treading on eggshells. So if you're going to tread on eggshells, you're going to do it really carefully to try and not crack the eggshells and try not to break anything. That's the feeling when we're walking on eggshells with another person, when we're tiptoeing around them. And there's this sense, again, I've done all this, so I know the feeling of it. There's that sense of vigilance, like,
Hypervigilance.
and it's sometimes not even conscious. It's like this, you just know that you don't feel fully yourself with that person. There's a level of there's a level of holding back, or there's a level of I've got to be really careful about what I say and how I say it, just in case they take it the wrong way. Or there's a censoring of yourself, like I best not say that, or I best say it in a really gentle voice with my head tipped to one side, so that they know I'm not, being aggressive. And so we adjust ourselves and manipulate ourselves, trying to be the right kind of person for them, which just has us shrink and shrink and shrink, because that's not what we're here for. We're not here to be right for them. We're here to be right for us. But we can't be right for us when, again, we're driven, as you say, by these programs in us, really, which are saying you're wrong, you're not enough, you're a failure, you lack, you're unlovable. These are all the kind of things that my clients report from their experience in this process. And so from that, you are never going to be able to fully be yourself and own who you are. You're never going to be able to say to the other person, well, this is my perspective, tell me yours, or this is what I would really love, what would you really love? Because you're in that place of like, oh, I've got to get it right for them, I've got to keep them happy, I've got to manipulate and adjust myself in order to be pleasing for them. And I know we tend to say people pleasing is a female thing. I don't experience that at all. I see that for a number of men who are such good-hearted people. They really do want to do good. They really do want to light other people up and to be a positive influence in their worlds. But that genuine good feeling, that genuine desire is covered over by all this crap that just has them manipulate that and distort that so that, they come out as a smaller version of themselves, which isn't who they're here to be.
I love the way you've said that, because I know I've experienced that, where you're trying to position yourself so you don't blow anybody up. It was kind of like because if you come in with an open mind and then you run into ones that aren't open, they're closed. There tends to be some explosions that happen that where you trigger someone is like, whoa. So it's it's a real it is in Canada. I would say you're treading on thin ice. It's but eggshells and thin ice, same idea. You're still I just need to digress for a moment, because I was canoeing in the Arctic when I was in university and with my father, and we'd had a big storm and we were out paddling away afterwards when the wind was dead calm, and here's an Inuit hunter standing on ice that was no, just super thin. Like how he was there, I don't know. They were fishing, he and his wife, and she thought it was hilarious, but he'd fallen in the day before. So it was just like, so it's that thin, it's that sensation of, it's really delicate, and that hyper vigilance that goes with that, and the degree of compromising you do to your identity, or even worse, coming up with multiple identities so that you're adapting your identity to fit the situation you're in. That when people talk about mixed messages, that's certainly one source of them, because someone will go into an environment and say what they think people want to hear there, and then go into a different environment and say something the opposite without being conscious of it, without being aware of it. And somebody else can observe it and go, whoa, what happened there? But that's just that result of trying to shapeshift yourself to fit into the whatever context you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We also talked about, and I want to touch on this now, this whole business of the male and the female tension, and particularly with the white male privilege running, but there's also uh, just a lot of domination in workplace environments where, at least in my experiences in my profession, we used to just joke about, well, just seed the idea to a man and they'll take it forward and it'll be okay. But if you mention it, you can mention it 10 times and nobody will hear it. On the 10th time, if it comes out of a guy's mouth, it's all of a sudden legit. And at the same time, there's a backlash on just creating some better balance and respect in conversations. What have you observed there with respect to men and gender and all of that?
Mm. Yeah, so the thing I'm seeing is that, and I think it's been happening for a number of years, but it's becoming more and more obvious since the Me Too movement. Since then I've felt this backlash against men, and to me it's just grown and grown. This it is a reaction against, it's not a response. And the key thing for me that's always important about when we're navigating life is this a reaction or is this a response? So what I'm seeing is that there was a reaction against as a result of the Me Too movement against men. Completely understand it at one level, because yes, there have been awful things done to women by men, but not all men. And to me, the reaction means that all men are being tarred with the same brush, saying that, well, they're all bad, and they are all trying to control women, and they're all trying to take over, and they're all being misogynistic, and they're all no. And of course, that's never true. And in fact, the women who say that, I don't think they even believe that to be truly true, because I know they'll have men in their lives who they value and appreciate. And it's funny how we can do this in our worlds, where we can use these big all-tarring brushes while at the same time having a person in our life who is the exact thing, and yet we value them, we love them, we realize, oh no, you're a human being. Oh no, I love you. This man here who's white and in a position of privilege, but oh no, all those men, they're all terrible, they're all taking advantage. So little aside there, I know that it's not even really true for the women who say it, but there is this sense of this anti-male rhetoric, this anti-male messaging in so many places now. And what I'm seeing is that there's been this swing, and we talked about this pendulum swing, didn't we, of which can often happen when we're making some kind of change individually or societally. There can be this swing of experience. So we've kind of gone from the experience you had, where it's like, well, men are absolutely in charge and we just play that game because that's just the way we get stuff done. We've now taken this swing into no men are bad, deny all the men, they don't get to say anything. It's just not helpful. It's not moving us forward. It's just literally flipping the coin from one side to the other. And everything I've ever done has been about valuing all the brilliance of diversity, the appreciation of uniqueness, and wanting that to be emphasized and flourished, because whether you're male or female, that is inherent in all of us. We've all got something unique to bring. But in this pendulum swing, the reaction from the women is sending some men, well, into different reactions. I guess we're seeing those who are in the Andrew Tate kind of world, who are going, well, yeah, F the women, we hate them all and we'll take advantage as much as we like. But then there are also men who are reacting in the opposite way, who are doing the eggshell thing. They're going, oh, well, perhaps I should just shrink. Perhaps I should just keep a bit quieter. Perhaps I should be really conscious and make a real effort to include the women and be thoughtful about the women. But then that turns them into this performative conscious leader, this performative trying to be a good man. And that is as exhausting and as unfulfilling as all the other stuff we've talked about already that has us feel out of alignment with ourselves. So that men aren't in their true power. Then whether they're being the Andrew Tate version or whether they're being the performative conscious man who's trying to be really careful and say the right thing to the women, neither is a man in their true healthy power. And I have a huge passion for helping these men clean out the reactions in them that are having them feel like they have to be like that around women, so that they can stand in themselves, which is the space of true recognition of self and other, true recognition of my value and your value, true equality and inclusion of all perspectives, no matter gender, sexuality, color, anything. It's all beautiful and it's all irrelevant. But where it comes from is the groundedness in you as an individual, with you as you are. And right now there's a lot of men who aren't feeling that because of this backlash that's had them go, oh my God. And in fact, one person said even his son, 14-year-old son, who's saying, well, I don't know if I'm okay, because just for the fact of being male. So it's not just the men of our age who are being impacted, it's young boys and men as well. And to me, that's no way for us to start raising our kids. So I want the more men we can get back in their healthy power, the better, because then that just spreads across the population.
Yeah, no, agreed. And it saddens me also because I'll scroll back because in one of the books I think you and I chatted about, Warriors of the Heart, is written by Dawna Jones. He describes what both genders look like in their absence of power. And for men, it was aggression. And that would be the Andrew version. Then, and for women, it was manipulation. So those are both signals that people have abandoned their power base and just gone into manipulating their outer world or coming at it in a way that that's not healthy on any level. And so I when I read that years and years ago in the 90s, I think, at the risk of aging myself, it struck me as being so true that those are both power stances, in a dominant way. And yet, in order to achieve balance, we have to have that masculine, feminine in one person, not divided up into multiple people. You've got to have it. Otherwise, you can't be receptive. You can't be, you can't listen well. There's so many things you lose out when you don't have that sort of, masculine, feminine balance. And I think that's as true of organizations as it is for individuals, to take it the next level. An organization that has embodied that understanding is one that takes time to reflect. It takes time to tap into its collective intuition. It works with these I'm going to use the word energies because it's what it feels like to me. And but it takes time to understand how to work with those energies. But when you do understand it, wow, you can really unleash a whole lot of possibility with that. So
yeah, absolutely. I just want to really emphasize that point about the masculine and feminine, because that's an idea which is often very misunderstood, where people think masculine means man and feminine means woman. But you're absolutely, so just to really, really highlight that, we are all a balance of some kind of masculine and feminine. And we're all different in that respect. Some people will have a higher proportion of feminine or masculine. Some people might be closer to the 50-50. I don't believe anybody's exactly 50-50. But yeah, we are all both those energies, because as you say, we are designed to receive and to be open and to listen and to create, which is all the feminine. And we are designed to take action. We're designed to work within structure. We're designed to protect, to bring all those masculine qualities forward. We are all of it. And yes, absolutely. The more we are that within ourselves, the more that is the leadership that you hold for those around you. And sometimes even that's enough for somebody to start to step into their own healthy balance of those two energies.
Yeah, and here's where you're hitting on context. The context you're in has a big influence on where how far you can go, what you're going to lean on, the masculine or the feminine, or whether you can come in and be balanced and, stay relatively balanced, barring any kind of event that's going to knock you off your center. And there's always those, of course, but it's having, when that happens, it's having compassion for that moment. One of the, as someone who, well, we both are in this place where you're standing from the outside, you're doing some observation of what's going on the inside of organizations. You're looking for behavioral cues and signals. And I'm certainly listening for language cues, because that frequently will tie right into consciousness level, and one of those ones is this blaming thing, which is immediately associated with victim. I mean, that's the powerless place. And it was the idea, and I know I picked it up on LinkedIn, and I'd like to dive into it a bit, because I think it has a lot to do with organizational workplace design and just how and management style as well. But it was that idea that if you're looking at an alternative governance model, you must have a lot of money, because that's when you have the luxury of being able to look at an alternative governance model. And here's us who are struggling away and who don't have the money. Therefore, we can't look at things like that because we're just trying to put food on the table. Gosh, if I've heard that line so many times, and it's like, yeah, we can play the survivor game until we collapse the planet. If that's your highest goal, then yeah, you can play that game. But my whole mission has been about not playing that game. It's been about using those, places of interruption, those places of where you don't feel you've got what you need, to completely reinvent how you approach things, and to do it from more of a creative stance. Mm-hmm. So, that's where, if you've got an organization that is not performing well, it's beating up on its people, it's a reinvention into the governance model, and the people vote. So, the new companies that are out there doing that work have people vote on, are you up for this? Because it's not trivial. You're going to have bumps. You're going to have places where you have to sit down and talk, have the hard conversations, and not run and not get triggered. And so, or if you are triggered, then know you are and say so, and go and do the work that clears it up. But it's that whole business of feeling a victim of the governance structure and of the hierarchy. What's your thought on that? Because we talked about that, and I'm curious about that. What's going on underneath the surface with that behavior?
Yeah. So really, it's the same fundamental cause as any other experience of lack. Because if we're in victim, like you say, we're in some kind of lack experience. We're in some kind of, I'm hopeless, I'm helpless, I can't, it's not possible. The viewfinder's gone myopic. So hence, of course, we sit there saying, well, no, I can't do that because ... And it doesn't feel good, because we are naturally designed for feeling empowered and like we can. And as you said, with having creative solutions. And so it's a classic sign of why somebody would want to come and work with me, because it's that place of like, oh, well, no, we can't do that. That's not possible for us. It's so against our natural spirit. And so when people have had enough of that, and they realize they do want that to change, and they don't want to keep being in that pattern, and you use the phrase there of, clearing out whatever is causing that. Yeah, when you clear that out, we're back in what I term the real you. The real you who does have creative ideas, who does see possibilities in ways and places that you never could have seen when you were here with that myopic perspective. It's just an impossibility. Like it's not a oh, you were uncreative here. It's literally like it's not even in your field of vision. It's not even possible to see or experience. It's just a function of being there. So the minute that negativity is gone, the minute that victim space is gone, you're back in empowerment, you're back in creativity, you're back in that desire to connect with others and exchange ideas and know that possibility comes from that. And that the more then you put your attention on that, step by step by step, it moves into expansion and capability. Anything that's opposite from that is not you. You don't have to live with it. And that's, yeah, it's the same source, it's the same cause. And yeah, there's so much more available.
So every time we have conversations like this, I'm reminded of a line in Shrek, and with Donkey, the animation Shrek, for those of you that aren't familiar, sort of into pop culture, but it's a line that Donkey says, layers, parfaits have layers, and so do all of these emotions. You'll clear a layer off, and then there'll be another memory that'll be sitting there waiting to be triggered, and then you clear that one off. So it's a patient process, is what I'm saying. I mean, Sam Kakakis in a previous episode uses his voice to realign someone, and that's mind-blowing work. It's just incredible. And then what you're doing is also another approach. So people have options. It's not as if we're sitting here going, well, I don't know how to cope with the world today. I'm discouraged by it. I don't know what the trajectory is. There's a whole lot of uncertainty. And yet, if you invest in yourself, and do this kind of work, then you're going to be well equipped, and you're going to constantly, it's not a one-off deal. You've got to be constantly updating and upgrading all the time, because there are layers there. And in each event brings out another one. And of course, right now, the big one is AI. So, people saying, well, young people sitting around coffee one day sort of said, well, yeah, that's there to replace us. It's like, whoa. Yeah, okay. If it's important to just shelve yourself and pretend you didn't come to this world for a particular reason, that's an option. But it's an option. It's not necessarily a certainty. And so this is where the beauty of uncertainty shows up, because it allows us to individually and then collectively decide, what role do we want to play in this world? What does this look like for me? And how can I bring out the deeper aspects of me that I've not yet seen? They're there, but I haven't yet seen them because the conditions, the circumstances haven't brought that forward. And here we are in exactly that place to bring it forward.
Yeah. So there's two things really popping for me with that. One is the beauty of being, and you talked about context a moment ago, when we put ourselves, because sometimes we have to do it on purpose, when we put ourselves in a context where we are going to be challenged to think bigger, higher, more possible, that in itself is a brilliant creation of that contrast again, where in sitting there going, oh no, well, I can't, that's a brilliant opportunity to recognize that and go, oh, well, they're doing it, so could I do it? Is that possible for me? And so that contrast is a brilliant space to be in, to raise those questions. Because if we're just in a sea of people who are being very similar to us all the time, and we're all in similar kind of thinking and similar kind of mindsets, and we can just keep each other happy, plodding along at the same kind of level, then that's fine. That's totally an option, and you can totally do that. But when you put yourself in environments where you get that contrast and you see people who are doing, achieving, enjoying, back to that thing of what it's really all about, enjoying their journey more, then that gets you to question your own experience and go, well, maybe I could have some of that. And equally, what I'm really keen to do is reframe the experience of being triggered. Because at the minute, I think we've just come to accept that we get triggered and the world should change in order to not trigger us.
Oh my goodness, you've just nailed it. You've just nailed it. I mean, I'm on these groups and they say, well, I'm not coming into the conversation unless it's safe.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
People better not say anything. And if they do not say anything, then you'll get triggered. So it's not conditional like that. It's more based on your skill set and what people are willing to, how people are willing to learn from each other. So I love that.
Absolutely. So it comes back to this eggshell thing again. It's like in trying not to trigger each other, we are just all shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. I flip that 180 because every single time I get triggered, it's like, amazing. I've got another opportunity here to clear out some of what's not really me so that I can rise again and go to that next level. To me, being triggered is a gift. It's an amazing opportunity. It shows me in me where I'm not yet free. It shows me where I'm not yet clean or clear. So why would I not want that? Like, I love that. Not necessarily in the moment. Like, I can have a moment of like, oh, this feels horrible.
Yeah.
But thank the Lord, there's ways of dealing with that so that we don't have to continue living with it, because these things will play on a pattern over and over again until you deal with it. So you can either tell the world to behave itself in order to satisfy your needs so you don't get triggered, or you can step up and actually do something about it so that you are, again, strong, capable, empowered, grounded in yourself, in the world. Then you can receive and respond rather than react and feel triggered.
Yeah, that, to me, that is the leadership imperative, what you've just described. You cannot call yourself a leader and not step in to the gap, not step into that void, that unknown, and discover what else you're capable of when you're under pressure, when the conditions aren't certain, when there's unpredictability, when there's volatility, of which the world right now is really strong in the volatility category. But if you don't use those spaces to expand your sense of self and who you are and get rid of some of the bits you've picked up that don't fit anymore, I think you are going to be on the mental health list. You are going to have experienced depression. So it's really, to me, it's really just setting it up so you can flow with. Now, I saw something the other day that said something, acceptance, let's move past acceptance. In other words, acceptance looked like it was bad. No, in my experience, acceptance is first, that's first place. That's first base. You just kind of go, okay, I'm here. I can fight with reality, or I can work with it. And so the acceptance says, I can work with it. I can work with this. And then that takes you to the next step. I mean, if you just sit there and go, I'm just going to accept everything that comes at me. Well, then sure enough, you're going to get, you're going to be a doormat to what reality serves up. But you have to be able to, recognize it. And I think what often works well, at least in my world, is be able to observe it, but not be emotionally triggered by it. So if you have, as you've just described, if you've gone through the work, you clear off your triggers, all of a sudden the kind of weird stuff that shows up in reality doesn't have that debilitating, negative, crashing effect that it once had.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get to shift from this protective, defensive vigilance into outflowing creativity, potential, possibility. What we're here for. Absolutely what we're here for.
Now, one of the other things we talked about in casual conversation is the business of hierarchies and what they do to people. Not so much hierarchies. I'm a big fan of hierarchies. Are natural in nature. They're natural in we use them for structure. But companies that are organized around centralized authority create this parent-child effect. And we sort of alluded to that earlier in this conversation, but I want to go back to it now because this is where choosing the governance model and the management style, you cannot play in self-management. You cannot play in these more flattened structures where they're decentralized and distributed. So you work more like a starfish than a spider, to use the metaphor that was put out in a book a long time ago. It was rather brilliant in my mind. But it is how are organizational structures and governance models having an impact on people who could grow, could evolve, but they got locked into a response that or a reaction, I should say, locked into a reaction that doesn't really help.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I would actually say, as much as I would prefer a working environment which is less hierarchical, but to me, it's not the hierarchy itself which causes the problem. As you just said, nature has hierarchies naturally. It's not wrong to have a situation where one person is in charge of some other people. In charge, not in control of, not better than, not more important than, just taking a different perspective, holding a different viewpoint than the rest of the team. Because we see something different when we're here and I've got a specific focus and this is my specific job, than when we're here and I'm seeing an overview and I'm perhaps seeing upwards differently and I'm seeing the whole of the downwards. So when I used to do team coaching, we would talk about the beach ball. Each beach ball having a segment representing each member of the team, and the team leader being the white patch on the top that sees a little bit of all those jobs and therefore sees the overall. It doesn't make the patch on the top better than any of the segments. The beach ball would not be a beach ball with any of those parts of that beach ball missing. They're all integral, they're all important and part of that whole. Where we've got confused is that parent-child thing. Because we've not generally been in the experience of good leadership in our growing up experiences, we tended to not have conscious parents. We tended to not have people who were our dads and mums in their own grounded leadership power. We tended to have mums and dads who were in their own reactivity, their own stuff that they hadn't ever done anything with. So we grew up with role models that were in reactive, controlling, parent-child dynamic. So when we've come into a hierarchical organization, all we've known is to fall back into those patterns of parent-child. And until, again, we've dealt with our own stuff, our own reactions, our own confusions around what we think it means that they're the boss and I'm the child, I'm the minion, I'm the one who's less important. For as long as we're carrying all that, we're going to keep thinking that hierarchies are the problem. It's not fundamentally the problem. Now, who knows? If you clean up the stuff, maybe people would then naturally come to more distributed leadership. Who knows? To me, that's...
Well, it does happen. I mean, on this podcast, we have Stefan Segatori's conversation around emotional mastery, and companies that are, are people who are investing in emotional mastery, and companies that are doing that don't have that issue because they can use these emotions as accelerators as opposed to debilitators. So it's a very intentional approach. Very intentional. So I'm going to use to parallel with the beach ball because I'm trying to, part of my mission is to reconnect people back to caring about the species that we have on this planet, that we share the planet with, although we keep forgetting that. I'm going to go use the metaphor of the well, not the metaphor, the reality of a wolf pack, because in a wolf pack, you always have an alpha male and an alpha female. And those two roles are pivotably important for the health of the pack because they have embodied, the leadership, the wisdom, the knowledge of how to work with the wild of the world and the uncertainty of the world, and also the possible predatory role of humans who just come out of nowhere and shoot them from the air or wherever it is. But that role, and I need to digress for a second because there's a story in the west coast of Canada about a wolf named Takaya, and very well known to the community, well known to the neighborhood. They knew it was an alpha wolf. They knew this wolf, and a trophy hunter from Victoria went out and shot it and said, basically, I only shot the wolf. I didn't kill the pack, because she had been accused of killing the pack. But that's a misunderstanding, because when you kill the embodiment of knowledge and wisdom and experience in a couple of figures that are part of that community, you do have a negative impact on the pack. So if we look at hierarchy as being just a simply structure as opposed to how we use it, I in decision making for dummies, I separated those two. Here's the hierarchy, that's the structure, but how you use it could be centralized or decentralized. It's going to be based on expertise. It's going to be based on who's my go-to for something. So it's a more, it's a different understanding. Let's just put it that way. It's a different understanding of what hierarchies are all about. And I know in network science, it's hierarchy is understood as being part of the deal. So that's a digression, but it is to say that when we get into this right or wrong thing, it's these snap judgments to say hierarchies are wrong, they're bad. No, depends on how you use them. And so I appreciate what you said there. Yeah. What kinds of things could we offer listeners now today in terms of moving through this very volatile environment that we're seeing pop up daily with the latest, I'm going to call them emotionally immature leadership at the governance, at the political levels. It's just coming out in ways that make you cringe. What can we offer, do you think?
So, shameless plug, but I have to say the work I do now is the fastest, the most effective, and the most reliable and permanent I have ever come across in terms of dealing with these emotional reactions. So I've been in coaching since 2014, earlier than that, given I started it in corporate, but officially training in 2014, psychology-based coaching, leaning on some therapeutic models and approaches, which didn't cut it. Then moving into spiritual exploration, trying all sorts of different inquiries, modalities, techniques, didn't cut it. Until towards the end of 23, beginning of 24, it was like you said before about delayering. It felt like I had delayered so much stuff that I was left with the stark reality that I was being driven by something beyond my control. Now, most people who come to this work don't need to do all that stuff that I've done before. It just was a brilliant recognition point for me, given everything I'd done, thinking I was making lots of progress, to then go, oh no, all I've done is expose the very thing that was behind all of that in the first place. I've made the engine visible. But in having made the engine visible, it then also became obvious to me I am not in control of this. Like you said before, it's like we are being driven by this program that we aren't in control of, this different identity, and we do talk about negative identities, this different negative identity takes me over. And suddenly I am this judgmental, reactive, frustrated, blaming victim. And I am literally like a different person if I'm at the effect of a negative identity. The whole world looks different. All that lack and scarcity comes up, all that not enoughness comes up. And yeah, as I say, my experience showed me that this was way beyond anything I was choosing. There was no conscious choice in it whatsoever. And so the great thing about this work I do is it gets to that level, as I say, without having to have done anything like I did before. So people could save a hell of a lot of time, given I spent over 10 years, tens of thousands of pounds trying to solve this stuff. And you don't have to. It shortcuts the whole process because we're getting to the base of it. We're getting to the driver. We're getting to the source of all these problems and more. You know, people might come in with one problem. Because we deal with the source of it, we capture 5, 10, 15, who knows? We never know. But all I know is that people get a whole load of multiple benefits way over and above what they actually come in to solve. And then with that driver gone, which is the driver of overthinking, it's the driver of the reactivity, it's the driver of the feeling triggered. With that gone, people instantly report feeling empowered, back in charge of their life, energized, happy, calm, peaceful, all the stuff that everybody is desperate to feel and trying to find it in all sorts of places where it's never going to be achieved. So and the fact it's fast. So again, you don't have to spend all the years I spent. It deletes it out. It deletes out the reaction. You're back in the feeling of the real you. You're back in charge of your own life. Able to speak up for yourself. No more walking on eggshells. The more you delete, the more of that you get. And so more and more and more genuine conscious leadership, genuine vulnerability, genuine connection and engagement, genuine joy. So we can stop the efforting, we can stop the trying, we can stop the manipulating and changing ourselves, altering ourselves, manipulating ourselves into being something that we're not.
Well, now that's a perfect, sorry, everybody's going to hear this dog barking in the background. I'm on the road again, and so I don't have any control over where I record. And today I have a cranky terrier who's decided to add a soundtrack to that conversation, which is hilarious.
He's join in. It's all good.
Yeah. But what I appreciate about what you did, and I mean, I've done something similar. I started my journey in 91 with respect to unpeeling some of the old identity things and finding the core identity. And, you know, it's a rough ride. There's no question about it. But the idea of the rough ride is that you get to a place, as you know, Helen gets to a place, Dawna gets to a place whereby, you know, we can handle a lot from people because we've been there. And that means that you're not going to flake out because you've hit a place where, oh, you've challenged me, and therefore, you know, something else gets triggered. Your realities get expanded, or the capacity to deal with multiple realities, multiple worldviews, I feel gets expanded when you do this work, which means that from a professional point of view, there's a lot of places you can go and you can check yourself. You know, like I was talking to a Japanese healer the other day, and he started talking to me about his worldview. And I had a response, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is such a Western response. I got to re-listen to this. So I went back to him. I said, could you explain that again? And I need to park my Western brain and listen to it from a more holistic perspective. And he did. It was great. But it's just those moments. It puts you in more control over how you're functioning in a particular space and place, and what you bring forward in it. So I totally appreciate the work you've done to get where you are. It's a gift to you, and it's also a gift to anyone who works with you. So yeah. So you can find Helen at Wild Fig Solutions, and I'll put all the details in the bottom. Anything else you want to close with?
What I'm feeling is the sharing of the fact, bon chance, you know, good luck, enjoy whatever it is you're doing, whatever path you take, whatever you engage in and don't engage in, the invitation is really back to that enjoyment of life. And if you're not feeling that, then keep your eyes peeled for whatever falls in your path that might be a step towards you returning to that feeling of enjoyment.
Thanks for joining, Helen. And for those of you listening to this, I'd appreciate it if you would share this with other people, comment, give us some feedback. That always helps. And this program will also turn up on audio in another week's time as part of the Inspirational Insights podcast, which has been running since 2016. It was opened by Ervin Laszlo, systems theorist, where we talked about the evolution and the expansion of consciousness through what is reality. So thanks for joining us. And thank you, Helen. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.